Welcome, friends. The night was cold, the mountain road slippery after a sudden rainfall. A wealthy woman, dressed in elegance, was driving her black SUV carefully along the cliffside. But fate had other plans. On a sharp curve, the vehicle spun out of control, its tires screeching against the wet gravel. Within seconds, the SUV dangled dangerously over the edge of the cliff, ready to tumble into the dark abyss below. Her heart pounded and fear consumed her as she cried out, "Help!" From the nearby fields, a poor farmer heard her desperate scream. His clothes were worn, his boots muddy, but his spirit was strong. Without a moment's hesitation, he ran toward the danger. Risking his own life, he grabbed hold of the car door and forced it open. The woman's terrified eyes met his, a silent plea for survival. "Take my hand," he shouted. She reached out, trembling, as the SUV groaned under its own weight, threatening to collapse into the depths at any second. With every ounce of strength, the farmer pulled her free, lifting her into his arms, just as the SUV gave way and plunged into the darkness with a thunderous crash. For a moment there was silence. Only the sound of her rapid breathing and the beating of his heart filled the air. He carried her to safer ground and set her down gently, ignoring the scratches and blood on his own arms. You saved me," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at him, not as a rich woman seeing a poor farmer, but as a human being looking at her savior. The farmer simply nodded, his expression humble. A life is worth saving. That's all that matters. And in that instant, something shifted between them. The barriers of wealth and poverty disappeared, replaced by a bond born of bravery, sacrifice, and destiny. Friends, this story teaches us that true courage and kindness are more valuable than gold or riches. Sometimes fate brings two souls together in the most unexpected way. If you felt inspired by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share. Soul of kindness. The woman sat on a rock by the roadside, her hands still trembling. The sound of the SUV crashing into the abyss echoed in her mind. Her ankle throbbed with pain from the fall, and she winced as she tried to adjust her shoe. The farmer knelt beside her, carefully examining her foot. His hands were rough and calloused from years of working the fields, but his touch was gentle. He tore a piece of cloth from his shirt and wrapped it around her ankle to keep it steady. "You'll be fine," he said softly, avoiding direct eye contact. She looked at him closely. His shirt was torn, his face streaked with sweat and dirt, but there was something in his eyes, calm, steady, and filled with sincerity. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. "Why risk your life for me? You don't even know me." He paused, his gaze fixed on the cliff where her car had vanished. "Because life is precious," he replied simply. "It doesn't matter if it belongs to a rich woman or a poor man. When someone needs help, you help them." Her chest tightened at his words. She had spent her life surrounded by people who valued her for her money, her name, her status. Yet here was a man who knew nothing of her and still, without hesitation, chose to put himself in danger for her. The cold mountain wind swept past them and she shivered. Noticing this, the farmer pulled off his flannel jacket and placed it gently over her shoulders. She tried to protest, but he shook his head firmly. "You need it more than I do," he said. For the first time since the accident, she smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "You don't even know my name," she whispered. He gave a faint smile. "And yet I was there when you called for help." Something unspoken passed between them in that quiet moment. A fragile thread of trust had been woven, a thread that destiny itself seemed to have placed in their hands. The night deepened, and the mountain road stretched endlessly ahead. Isabella tried to walk, but each step sent pain shooting through her injured ankle. She stumbled, nearly falling, until Daniel quickly caught her arm. "You can't go far like this," he said firmly. "Let me help." Before she could argue, he knelt down in front of her. "Climb on my back." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "No, I can't. You've already done too much for me." He turned his head slightly, his tone steady. "You won't make it otherwise." Hesitant, Isabella finally agreed, climbing onto his back. To her surprise, he lifted her effortlessly, his strong frame carrying her weight as though it were nothing. The steady rhythm of his footsteps echoed against the quiet night, the crunch of gravel beneath his boots mixing with the whisper of wind through the trees. At first she kept silent, but slowly her head rested against his shoulder. For the first time in years, she felt safe, not because of security guards or high walls, but because of this man's strength and sincerity. "You don't even know my name," she whispered after a long silence. Daniel gave a small laugh. "Names don't matter when someone is hanging off a cliff." Still, she smiled faintly. "It's Isabella." He nodded as he continued walking. "Daniel." The simple exchange felt like more than just names. It was the moment two separate worlds introduced themselves as equals. After nearly an hour, they reached a small wooden cabin nestled at the edge of the forest. Smoke curled from its chimney, and the warm glow of a lantern flickered inside. Isabella looked at it with wide eyes. It was humble, nothing like the mansion she was used to, but it radiated comfort. Daniel carried her to the porch and gently set her down on a chair. He stepped inside, lighting another lantern, and placed it on the table. "You can rest here tonight," he said quietly. "I'll make some tea." Isabella looked at him, her heart heavy with gratitude. "You've given me more tonight than I can ever repay." He met her gaze, calm and unwavering. "I didn't do it for repayment. I did it because it was right." And in that moment, she realized she was looking at a man unlike anyone she had ever met. Welcome, friends. The morning sun spread golden rays across the quiet valley. Inside the small wooden cabin, Isabella sat by the window, her eyes tracing the gentle hills that stretched into the distance. She held the cup of tea Daniel had given her, its warmth steadying her hands. Her heart still full of the night's events, she turned her gaze to him. He was outside chopping wood with steady movements, each swing filled with quiet strength. There was no arrogance in him, no desire for recognition. He lived simply, yet his courage had saved her life and changed hers forever. When he stepped back inside, Isabella rose slowly, balancing on her injured ankle. She walked toward him, her eyes glistening. "Daniel," she whispered, "I came close to losing everything. But instead, I found something I didn't even know I was missing." He looked at her, silent, waiting. "I found kindness. I found courage. I found you." Her voice broke slightly, her emotions spilling into every word. Daniel lowered his gaze, his rough hands tightening at his sides. He had never been told words like that before. Finally, he met her eyes, his own expression softening. "I only did what was right." Isabella reached out and took his hand, rough, calloused, and strong. "And sometimes, doing what's right is what changes everything," she said. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The sound of birds outside, the gentle breeze through the trees, the golden light of dawn, everything blended into one timeless moment. Two souls from two different worlds stood together, united not by wealth or status, but by courage and fate. She smiled through her tears. "I don't know where this road will lead, but I don't want to walk it without you." Daniel nodded slowly, his heart speaking louder than his words. "Then let's walk it together." The valley glowed brighter, as though nature itself was blessing their new beginning. Friends, this story reminds us that true love and kindness rise above wealth and status. Sometimes one act of courage can change two lives forever. If you felt touched by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share Soul of Kindness.